So good morning, everybody. This is Brett Janelle, and I'm here with my wife and business partner, Annette Janelle. And today's webinar is on the local real estate market. And we have a whole lot of people here on this call, a combination of people, well, looks like we're approaching 40 people on both the phone and also via Zoom online. So we just wanted to go over a quick bit of housekeeping for those who haven't used this before. So hopefully you see a slide on the screen if you're online. Those listening obviously aren't going to see anything. And if you prefer to see us large and in life, you can actually click on the little image of us, the video, and it will swap between the slides and us. Or if you prefer to be able to see the slides larger, click again, and then the slides will take up most of your screen. So hopefully you'll find that helpful. So Annette and I plan on covering some information this morning for you. And then towards the end of that, we'll open it up for question and answer. And at that time, I'll explain how that works. We can take questions whether you're online watching the video or whether you're coming in via the phone and listening in. And I'll give you directions at that time. For those who are online, if you have questions as you go along, you'll notice at the bottom of Zoom, there should be a little Q&A, question and answer box. You're welcome at any time to click on that and type in questions that you may have as they come to mind, and then we'll do our best to answer them when we get to that point. And when we open up, I'll give instructions to those on the phone how they can raise their hand for a question. But you're all muted at the moment, and we'll open it up person by person as we have questions later. So let's jump in. So basically what we wanted to cover with you this morning is talking firstly about renters, landlords and mortgage payments. So again, for those online, you'll be able to see the slide. For the benefit of those who are just listening in, I'll make sure I try to cover everything that appears on the slides. So we'll also talk about local real estate market trends. We'll look at mortgages, interest rates and refinances and how that impacts us here locally. We'll talk about sellers, whether sellers should sell now or wait. And then we'll talk about home values, what we, in our personal opinion, expect to see over the upcoming months. So let's start with the first part, so renters. So as you may have all heard in the news, our governor put in place a moratorium just recently this past week on evictions and also late fees. So what that means for those of us who are renting is that if you're unable to make your rent payment, then you will not be evicted as a result. No evictions are allowed. And importantly, as part of that, is that if you are in financial needing help, we would highly recommend suggesting to reach out to your landlord and talk to them and let them know and come up with some arrangement of what you can or can't do. So while there's a moratorium, it's just during this state of emergency. It doesn't mean you're forgiven your rent. So some people have the misconception that, okay, I don't have to pay rent and it'll all be forgiven. That's not the case. You're still going to owe it. So it's better to pay some, if at all possible, than several months from now owing several months of back rent. Do you have anything to add to that, Annette?
No, just a key point is, yeah, exactly. Making it up is going to be very challenging, so it's much better to do it now, and if you're able to continue paying your rent now, to do it now.
Great. And then for those who might be landlords on the call where you own investment property and have renters, we would recommend being proactive and reaching out to your tenants and just finding out what situation they are in. If they're unable to make this month's rent payment or subsequent months, coming up to arrangement with them. Obviously, you want to keep your renters, you don't want them to move out. So just by opening up a dialogue and just working with each other, we're all in this together, we think that would help everybody. And
I was actually going to point out that even because we ourselves are landlords, and one of the things that we've done is to reach out to the tenants and also come up with a payment plan if they're not able to do it. So they still owe the rent. It's just if they're not able to make as much now, then maybe make more later on to be able to make up the difference.
Yeah, so as we said before, so it's not as big a hit for the tenants, in several months' time when we get past this. And then the third point we have on the slide, mortgage forbearance. So for those who are about to make their mortgage payment and are perhaps struggling, whether it's you or someone you know, the federal government put in place what's called mortgage forbearance, and this is for loans that are backed by the federal government. If you don't know that, you'll need to look at your loan paperwork or contact your lender. But if you're not able to make your payment, whether it's a federally insured backed loan or not, we'd recommend highly reaching out to your lender and letting them know that you're struggling for whatever the reasons are, and then they may be able to either pause your loan payment or come up with some other arrangement, a reduction in the mortgage payment this month to help you. Again, they don't want you to be under undue stress or looking at moving or anything crazy like that. They're there to help you. So, reach out to them. And we've found even lenders who are not backed by the government in terms of the loans themselves, they want to help you. They want to know and see what they can do to assist you until we get past this.
Absolutely. They don't want to own your house. They do not want to take it back. They want you to keep it. So they'll, in most cases, will try to work with you. But you got to be patient, because trying to get through, there's a lot of people that are trying to get through to their lenders and talk to them.
So let's now talk a little bit about our local real estate market. And first, Annette and I would just like to give some observations that we've had over the last several weeks while we're all dealing with this. Do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely seen some changes. One of the things, as far as showing homes, buyers are still going out and looking at homes. But what we're asking for is the sellers to turn on all their lights and to open up all doors, internal doors to the house, so that people do not need to touch anything. And oftentimes the real estate agents will wear rubber gloves or some kind of gloves when they enter the house, but it's no guarantee. So they also use the hand sanitizer, but as home sellers, we advise that wipe down all the doorknobs, all the entrance to the house, as well as the light switches. And then buyers are traveling in their own cars instead of going with their agent. They'll just meet their agent at the house. And we're often doing more walkthroughs. So online walkthroughs, we're taking advantage of that. We're having our photographers actually do more videos inside the home, so that people don't necessarily have to go to the house if they don't need to.
Yeah, but we just wanted to reassure everyone that real estate is still happening. Not only are people looking at homes and going and viewing them, they're still writing offers. Real estate sales are closing. Things have slowed down a little bit. We'll talk about that in a moment and to why. But we are still in a good market. We are experiencing some challenges with the lending side of it, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. So just talking about our local market, so we've got a slide up here for those who are able to view, but I'll explain it for those who are listening in. So this graph is just that we have on the screen is showing us median sales prices, and you'll see on the right-hand side of the graph I've highlighted in yellow where the current median sales price is. And for those listening in, the median sales price as of a week ago was $398,000. And in fact, this week, it's actually gone up by a fraction of a percent, and it's basically $400,000 for Reno Sparks. But the important part is, you'll notice the trend of the graph is that prices haven't dropped. With that said, it's a little early to tell, because this is the price when the home closed. So those homes that changed owners this past week is what we're looking at in terms of the sales price. However, that was negotiated or agreed upon some 30, 45 days ago, when the buyer got in contract with the seller. So we're actually really looking at old data. It won't be until the following weeks that we start to see what the impact is, if any, on price as homes close that go into contract today. We won't see that for another 30, 45 days. But at the moment, our market is looking very healthy.
And actually, this is what we typically see this time of year, is the prices start going up. We often see more homes coming on the market. So right now, it's normal.
And then the other measure that we looked at is the number of closings that are happening. And just excuse me for those who are online and listening in. I have windows everywhere on my computer and I can't see what it is I'm looking at. Oh, thank you, Annette. Annette has it on another screen. So closed sales are as it's being recorded with the counting, it's changing hands. So on the right-hand side of the screen, what we're looking at is a graph that's showing us over the last couple of weeks, there was a slight dip in terms of the number of homes that changed hands. And then in this past week, it's bounced back up to where it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. And you'll see, for those who can see, that it's actually the same as what it was a year ago, or in fact slightly higher. So more homes have closed now than this time last week. But from last week compared to this week, we did have an increase of about 15% in terms of the number of closings. There were some hold-ups in lending and people, some changes which we'll talk about in just a moment. So again, good, healthy real estate market locally. So we wanted to talk a little bit about mortgages, interest rates and refinances. And one of the misconceptions that we've come across, and maybe you've read about in the paper or on the news, is that the federal government reduced the rate a few weeks ago down to basically zero. And a lot of people thought that was the mortgage interest rate. And the Fed rate is not tied directly to mortgage interest rates. It's basically borrowing between banks overnight is what that rate's all about. It trickles down eventually, usually to mortgage rates in some way, but there's not a direct correlation. But with that misconception, we found, and the lenders that we work with have found, that lots of buyers started cancelling the loan locks. We're in contract on a house, they had a loan in place, and they had an interest rate that was set, and they wanted to cancel that, thinking that they would get a better rate with rates coming down. And that's created a lot of uncertainty in the market. The way lending works is very complex, but with hedging against rates going up and down and the things lenders do to protect their interest, people cancelling caused a lot of problems and has caused our lenders to put things on hold or to slow down the rate of loans so that they can make sure that they're protected.
And then also what's happened is we've had a lot of refis. So people jumping in, and I spoke with a lender just a couple days ago that she said pretty much all of her business right now are refinances. That also puts a lot of pressure on the system, which follows right into liquidity. Lenders have a certain amount of money that they can use to loan out to people. And so what they do is they'll give you a loan and then they basically sell it to the secondary market to free up some cash to continue giving loans. What's happening is the secondary market is very volatile and they're not getting the prices that they were getting before. And so in some cases, we're seeing lenders actually stop loaning money. We have there's three big ones, and it's not the federally backed loans, it's more of the loans where people are not, 1099 W-2s. There's not regular W-2s. So they've put a hold on those, trying to wait till the market settles more so that they don't basically lose their shirts in the secondary market. That has put a lot of pressure on people that have their homes in contract, and then all of a sudden the buyer's lender has put a hold on actually loaning money. On the flip side, for those that are federally backed loans, and because of all the refis and everything that's happening, they've had to slow down the loans. So we are seeing some of the homes that were supposed to close in March are now being pushed into April to close, because they're trying to, they need to basically clear out how many loans that they are doing right at the moment in order to make headway for new loans, and they just need to slow it down.
So in short, lots of turmoil in the mortgage market, and if you're involved in some way purchasing a home, selling a home, there are going to be delays and not good answers. Most people don't know what's going on. The information's not necessarily passed down from, within processing of the loan down to the lender or the loan officer you work with. So we just all need to be patient at the moment, and that was part of one of the dips that we showed on a graph just before.
And quite frankly, one of the things that we're seeing are interest rates. People will ask us, what's the interest rate right now? That's the other thing that's very volatile. The lenders that I've spoken to, they get notices of what the interest rate is, and they've gotten multiple notices during the day how it's changed, and it can be lower and then all of a sudden be significantly higher. There are huge jumps in between. So again, volatility.
Yeah. So sellers. So a big question we get from our sellers and for people who are thinking of selling and just people in general that we talk to is, if I'm thinking of selling or I was preparing my house to sell, should I still sell now or should I wait until this is all behind us? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's really dependent on your situation and your need, motivation to sell. But we wanted to try to provide some insight as to how this works, having all of us as a community went through this back in 2008 where there was a major change in the economy and the impact that had. I'm sure we all remember that well. So we just wanted to kind of give some input and advice. So for those who are on the phone, we have another graph that's on the screen, but what we want to talk a little bit about is homes under contract. So today we can see that my computer's advancing on its own. homes under contract has taken a slight dive over the last few weeks. So this is a measure of homes where buyer and seller have agreed on a price, are now in contract, and it's going to go through to closing and will change hands in some 30 to 40 days. And excuse me for those who are on the screen, this slide wants to keep advancing on its own. But the important thing here is homes are definitely still going under contract and selling, but because of all the complexity Annette talked about in the mortgage market, it is kind of slowing things down. You wanted to say something, Annette?
No, it's continuing to advance.
Yeah, so for those watching, it did advance to the next slide. So, and it's continuing to advance without me. So I'm just going to pause the slides for one moment, my apologies, and we're going to just fix that so that they don't keep doing that. The joys of technology.
You know, it's interesting. I had a gentleman about 3 weeks ago. He was saying that he wants to put his home on the market, and he indicated to me, he goes, you know, I don't want to put my home on the market on a downward market, which I can appreciate that, definitely. But it's interesting, if we look back in time, in 2007, that was the peak of our real estate market. So that was the closest recession we've had. So 2007 was the peak of our market. In 2008, we started seeing our market decline. Actually, it was the end of 2007, we started seeing it decline. Those homeowners that decided they wanted to wait and not sell their home in a declining market, they had to wait a very long time, because it was 2010 that we actually started seeing the bottom of the market. And then it wasn't until 2015 that we started seeing the prices of the homes be similar to what they were in 2008. So selling, if you're thinking of selling, it's not necessarily the wisest thing to wait if it's a downward market.
Well said. So just an example of that so we can kind of see it visually, will come up in a moment, but I guess one of the first questions is, well, why are things changing? And for those who can see, I'm sure we're all aware of the unemployment filing numbers. A week ago we had over 3 million people file for unemployment. This past week, it just came out, I think it was today, 6.6 million new people filed for unemployment benefits. So that's already close to 10 million people in 2 weeks. So that just changes everything, because it's part of the process of giving a loan. Before it funds and the home changes hands, the lender wants to make sure the applicant, the borrower, is still employed, and there's 10 million people now that aren't employed. So if any of them were in the process of purchasing a home, that's going to come to an end. They won't be able to continue with that purchase because they're not going to get the loan. So it just has a whole rippling effect throughout the whole economy, the jobs, and then the impact that has on loans and purchases. But if we have a look at what we kind of went through back in 2008 that Annette kind of touched on, those who sold in 2008 got a price. Those who waited, hoping that the market would come back, ended up chasing the market down and ended up with a significantly lower price. As Annette alluded to, selling in 2008 was a whole lot better than selling in 2009, 2010. So we don't know what the market holds. We don't know whether we're going to have some sort of a repeat of 2008. Hopefully it'll be nothing like that, but there is a lot of change going on. If you read the news and the analysts, some suggest this is as big or even bigger than what we went through as we enter a recession. So we have no way of knowing exactly, but if our advice would be, if you really need to sell and you can't wait it out a year, 2 years, 6 months, then now would probably be a smart time. And for several reasons. At the moment, we have a certain number of sellers on their market, a certain amount of competition. When the market does turn and pick back up and we're no longer sheltering in place, all of those sellers who waited are now going to be putting their homes on the market, and they're all going to be competing with each other. And we know for certain every time that happens, that has a downward pressure on prices. Prices go down, and that's what you're kind of seeing in this graph. There's more competition. You know, back in 2008, we had all of the foreclosures and short sales. I'm not suggesting we're going to have that, but as more homes come on the market, there's more competition. Some sellers are more motivated than others. They reduce the price. That brings the price down and so forth.
And we're definitely seeing that, I mean, in our own clients, but then also speaking with other agents, they have basically people that want to put their homes on the market but are waiting. They're waiting until the social distancing isn't there anymore. So we're looking, I don't know exactly at this point, it keeps getting pushed out. But again, like Brett pointed out, all of them are looking to put their homes on the market around the same time, and you're going to be putting pressure on those prices.
Yeah, but if you don't need to sell and you know you can wait 6 months, a year, 2 years, depending on what happens with prices, then probably don't sell. But if you know you're wanting to make a move for whatever reason in life, then now is probably a pretty good bet. If it was me, I would be doing it now rather than waiting, given just the unknown.
Right, and quite frankly, so appraisers go in and appraise a property to make sure that it is priced right for the market. Our appraisals are still coming in at value. So it's still a very strong market right now.
Yeah, what it is in a month's time or 2 months, you know, we have no way of
Right.
knowing. So home values is of interest, obviously, to all of us. So I guess this is a really hard question to answer because it really depends on how long this lasts. Is this all going to be behind us in 6 or 8 weeks, as some people are hoping, or is it going to be, you know, August, September, October, or is there going to be a second wave of this? So we have no way of knowing. So everything is really dependent on how long this pandemic lasts for. But what we do know in the short term is we are definitely going to see a softening in the real estate market, primarily because of the unemployment. That's going to have a big impact.
Unemployment, and then also the loans. So the volatility in the loans, some of them not basically holding them off, and then also some, like I said, some of the lenders are stopping their lending for the moment and then just waiting.
And some buyers can't wait, so you know they back out of the contract. So lots of things changing, a very dynamic and changing situation. The medium term, it's really hard to know what that time period is or when exactly that's going to be. But the longer this goes on, what we do know is there will be more loan defaults. We know there will be businesses who fail and won't be able to reopen their doors and therefore won't be able to re-employ the people that they've either had to let go or have furloughed for the moment. And there will just be a lot of uncertainty in the market, people just being unsure, and it will take time for people to get past that to feel confident again, to make purchases, which will help, you know, keep prices up. What we do know in the long term, because we've seen this cycle many times, for those who can see the graph, you can see each of the recessions on that in 1970, in the 80s and so forth. And what we do know after each period of decline in property prices, they always do come back. So we have every confidence in the long term that values will return to where they were yesterday and will probably continue to rise, which is always the long-term trend. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I agree.
So this is our first time doing this with everybody in this forum with a Zoom webinar. We've done other online things, but we wanted to just take a quick poll, if I can work out how to do that, and just to find out from each of you who are online. So if you're on the phone, just bear with us for a moment. For those who are online, you're going to have a couple of questions that just pop up on your screen. And the first one that we just ask you to respond to is, was today's webinar helpful? Did you get something out of today in one form or another? And if you can just check the box and then click next, and then it'll take you to the second question, which is simply, would you like us to do, or would you like to attend future Zoom webinars that Annette and I host in conjunction with, you know, our sponsors from the Truth Series and so forth? So if you could just answer both of those questions, and then at the end just press submit after you've answered both of those appropriately, that would be great. And then what I would just like to do before we open it up to your question and answers is just tell you about a couple of upcoming events that we do have scheduled for those who are interested. The first one is next week on Tuesday. Our Senior Move Manager, John, with Janelle Moves Made Easy, is volunteered to do a workshop on right-sizing and downsizing. It'll be a Zoom meeting, so it'll have active participation. You'll be on the call, you'll interact, talk, and so forth. But given we're all stuck at home, and some of us have more clutter, and it was talking about the mess in my office, to take advantage of this time and do some decluttering. So whether you're moving or not doesn't really matter, but a lot of us, I won't say all, some are very organised, have too much stuff around, whether it's in the garage or the kitchen or the spare room. So John's going to help with some techniques of how to go about decluttering, how to do it in a systemised way, how to set some goals around it, how not to get overwhelmed. So it'll be a small group. We'll probably cut it off at around 10, 15 people. But if that's of interest to you, you can go to our website, janellegroup.com events, and sign up, register for that. So that's on next Tuesday, April the 2nd. On April the 14th, we have our regular seminar, the Retired Living Truth Series, The Truth About Mistakes to Avoid When Selling Your Home. So that'll be in the same format that we're doing today. It'll be a webinar where you connect, and if you'd like to attend, just go on and register. And then unfortunately, earlier this month, I think our seminar was March 18th, or sorry, actually it's now last month.
16th, was it?
16th, was it? Our seminar, The Truth About Staying Independent, we had to postpone for obvious reasons. So we're going to reschedule that for April the 30th and do it online. So those who had registered before will reach out to you, but it'd help us if you do want to attend that, just to go to the website, register for that, and again, it'll be in the same format as today. And then,
except we'll have panelists for that one.
There'll be panelists, yes, correct. So you'll see, you see Annette and I on the screen at the moment. You'll see 4 boxes, me moderating, and then our 3 panelists that were going to be at the seminar have kindly offered to be available on that date to do it again with you all in this format. And we will have question and answer at the end, just like we normally do when we're physically at our venue. And then each Thursday at 10 a.m., just to help in any way that we possibly can, we're going to host either a workshop, a seminar, or interview perhaps different people from the community that can help some of our partners, our sponsors and so forth. So every Thursday at 10 a.m. you can expect us to be doing something, and where you'll find out about those again is on our website at janellegroup.com events.
That's /events.
Sorry, /events. So www.janellegroup.com/events. We'll have all of the events and we're continually adding to them there. So our main seminars that we've done are on the Retired Living True series, but to do more, it was just easy for us to put them on that page and just have all of the events, and I'm sure a lot of you have already been there and seen the different events that we have coming up. So I think what we'd like to do now is just open it up to question and answer. I'll just end the poll. So thank you to everyone who responded. So if you have a question, so let's start with people who are on the phone first. If you have a question and you're calling in from the phone listening, you can press *9 on your phone, and that will put you in a queue, and we will get to each person, unmute you, and then that will give you the ability to ask your question. For those who are online, you can, as we said earlier, click on the Q&A box and type in your question if you would like, and we will just respond. I'll read out the question, and Annette and I will respond to that question. Or if you would like to speak through your computer or your mobile smart device, then at the bottom of your screen you should see there's a little hand symbol, raise hand I think it's called, and again that'll put you in a queue, and we'll just work our way down the queue and answer as many questions as we possibly can.
Yep, it looks like we have 2 already.
So let me go to...
We have our dates wrong.
You seem to have your dates wrong. Okay, we'll go back. They should be correct on our website. If I have them incorrect on the slide, I apologise. And unfortunately, I'm not sure which ones you're referring to. So I think it's Larry. So Larry, if you could just post it again and just let us know which ones, we'll definitely have that corrected. The other question someone's typed in is, when will the moratorium include the entire rent, which can include food, etc., for the 55 plus inclusive communities, is the question. So let us think about that. Yeah, so I don't believe it will include food or anything at any stage. It's just for the rental component, but I would suggest asking your person there at the community, if you're currently at a community, and they might have more information. But from our understanding, it only applies to the rental amount of the accommodation, not additional services. But how communities are dealing with that would be a question hopefully they should be able to answer for you.
It looks like their date that's wrong is the decluttering one, April 2nd, which
Oh,
is
April,
today.
that would be today. Yeah. Okay, so thank you. I think it was Larry. So next Tuesday must be April the 7th, I think. So it's next Tuesday. So whatever date that is, I'm pretty sure that must be the 7th. Is that the 7th?
We'll have to...
3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. It's the 7th, so thank you. Yes, so I see Larry. Yes, today is April the 2nd. You're right. Yeah. So thank you. So again, someone else has also put in the same thing. The decluttering event, and it's on the website with the correct date, I hope. No, I'm pretty sure. It's Tuesday, April the 7th, which is next Tuesday, and it is at 10 a.m. So thank you.
Let's see, do we have any other questions?
We do. We have some hands raised.
Bear with us, we're learning how to do this ourselves.
So anyone who wanted to speak and ask a question, if you're on your phone, *9, we'll have you pop up in the queue and then we can unmute you. Or again, if you're online, at the bottom of your screen or wherever your Zoom window is, we'll have the option there. I'm just clicking on Annette's to raise hand. So it's probably at the top of your screen if you're on a phone, a smartphone or a tablet. There's a raise hand button. So we have a couple more questions that people have typed in. So the first one is, the MLS has pushed to prevent pre-listing marketing activities. So I think what the person is asking is the MLS nationally, the National Association of Realtors, has put in place or is putting in place throughout the country, it's area by area, to prevent for sale signs going up prior to the home actually being on the multiple listing service where everyone can see it. So there was a concern that some agents were perhaps putting homes up for sale with a for sale sign way in advance, hoping that they would get the buyer and wouldn't allow market forces to get that seller the highest possible price. So to protect consumers, sellers, rules were changed which apply to all realtors. And again, it's area by area, and I don't think it's been implemented here just yet, but it will be soon. I think it's to be implemented everywhere by end of May, or at least that was the original plan. It may have changed with everything going on. That in order for a for sale sign to appear or any marketing to be done to the public, the home must be on the market on the multiple listing service for everyone to see within, I think, 24 hours of that time, if I'm not mistaken. So great question.
That's
Thank
correct.
you. Yes, that is it. Yes, so thank you. And let me just click the box. Not a question, just a comment. Great way to continue sharing your information. Thank you. Well, thank you to the person who said that. We appreciate that. So, and if you are, so the next question from Diane. If you are a landlord, what expectations should we have regarding delayed rent payments? Not sure if this was previously addressed. So great question, Diane. So what expectation as a landlord should we have? So we would recommend reaching out to your tenants so you know what their intention is and you can plan accordingly. The first thing you'll know if you don't reach out to them is that money's not deposited in your bank account or your check's not in the mail. So rather than having that happen, we would just suggest being proactive, reaching out. I know some people are fearful of doing that. Well, if I reach out, then they're going to say, well, I can't pay. They can do that anyway based on the moratorium. There's nothing to cause a tenant to pay, and that's kind of, I guess, one of the downsides is that, yeah, all tenants could just stop paying rent and there's nothing a landlord can do about that at this time. But just educating your tenant by reaching out, letting them know they are still going to owe the money. It would help them greatly if they can't pay the full amount to at least pay what they can afford to at the moment, so they have less of a burden later on because they will still owe you the full amount.
And then coming up with some kind of payment plan for them at a later time. So it's better to kind of set that out now ahead of time than to wait until this is lifted.
Yeah, so if perhaps they can only make half the rent payment, then in subsequent rent payments when this is all over, then they're going to have to pay an additional amount each month until they make you whole again. So great question. Again, if we're not providing enough detail specific, you're more than welcome to call our office and we'll answer questions one-on-one if we can't address everything here. Just a big thank you for making this format available. It's nice to have contact. We feel the same way.
Yes.
We just wish we could see you all. There's just too many people on for us to have all the little windows popping up and seeing everybody. But we're going to do some workshops and some other different things we have in mind where we can actually see and talk to each other via this format. So I'm looking forward to that. If the rental contract ends, does the renter have any recourse then? So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. If the rental contract ends. Okay, so maybe they haven't been making payments, the contract ends, they still have a obligation to you based on the contract to still pay you. So again, we're not attorneys or can't provide legal advice, but what we would suggest the case would be is that if they're not paying rent or they've moved out of the house, then the recourse would be then their credit. First, obviously, contacting them, But secondly would be then informing the credit bureau or bureaus that they are deficient in their payment, and then through that process would be how you would hope to try to recover. But again, that'd be a great question for an attorney, and we'll actually pose that to our attorney when we're talking to him next.
Yeah, that's a great attorney question.
Yeah, because I don't know whether you can take him to small claims or how that would work. Lots of unknowns and changing situations.
But the key thing is to really have a conversation with your tenants and just let them be aware that, yes, they still owe it. Even when the contract ends, they still owe this money, and it could affect their credit if they don't pay it.
Again, if anyone wants to ask a question who's dialed in and listening, because I see there's a lot of people, again, it's *9 *9 on your phone, and that'll put you in the queue, and then we can unmute you. Thanks for offering this format. Good info. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, anybody else? Well, if there aren't any other questions, feel free. You can definitely call us at a later time, and we're happy to answer your questions. We are still in business. We are working from home. This is actually our dining room, but we don't typically have the sign in our dining room, but we are more than happy to answer your questions. And our phone number is 775-432-6300.
And then, again, for the upcoming events, if you have pen and paper handy, was Janelle Group, so Janelle spelled like the month of June with 2 L's on the end, group.com/events, and you'll find the upcoming events there. Again, feel free to contact us. If you're having trouble with Zoom in any way, our team are more than happy to help you walk through. If you're dialing in and be interested, actually, if you have a device and you'd like help getting online, we'd be more than happy to try to talk you through that, whatever we can do to help. And then Harper has followed up on the previous question, does the tenant have to move out after a contract has ended? So with rental agreements here, after the period of time has ended, they then go to month. So no, the tenant doesn't have to move out. They should give you notice if that is their intention to move out. And if you don't wish to renew the lease by default going month to month, then you should give them appropriate notice, which is usually at least 30 days. The more the better if you're not wanting to renew that lease. Again, go back and look at what it says in your lease agreements you had. There may be differences in it, but that's how a typical one does work. So thank you for following up with that question. Some thank yous. So thank you to those people who have said thank you. And I'm just curious, we haven't had anyone who's done *9, so I don't know if I'm giving the wrong direction in terms of that working. That's how we've done it before. So I apologise if anyone was wanting to ask a question. Oh, I see, someone has. They've popped up their hand. So thank you, whoever did that. Attendee raised hand, and maybe I'm just not finding it. Oh, there we go. So someone calling with the last 4 digits of 1735. I'm going to unmute you so you can ask it your question.
Okay.
So you should get a message saying you've been unmuted. So yeah, what is your question?
Yeah, okay, I've been unmuted. Yeah, this is Joe Parks, and I was just wanted to see if the *9 worked myself, and I do appreciate your having this format.
Well, thank you, Joe, and good morning, Joe, and thank you so much for testing it so we know that it is working. And it's wonderful to hear your voice.
Yes.
So thank you, Joe.
And we are learning from this, so we really appreciate your feedback too. So telling us what works and isn't working.
Yeah, and
This is Lois. So are we. We didn't manage to get on the Zoom, but we will test it out after this call's over.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you, Lois. So I'm just going to mute Joe and Lois. Thank you so much for doing that for us. And again, if we can help anyone in any way with the technology, with questions, yeah, just don't hesitate to reach out. And we look forward to seeing you all online in this new environment over the upcoming weeks. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yep. Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.